Hi, this is Robin. Welcome to this month's tutorial. In two step-by-step demos, I'll show how to use AI features in Photoshop to achieve quick, natural skin smoothing. You'll learn how to eliminate or reduce blemishes, and just keep in mind the same techniques could be used on wrinkles, plus remove dark under eye circles and tattoos. I'll demonstrate some simple, efficient methods to create virtually flawless portraits, and you can see this is an example of the kind of thing that you can create here. So here's the starting photo, and you can see that this poor young woman has all kinds of acne or pimples, and this is after I was able to use some of the AI tools in Photoshop to smooth her skin. And you can see that because she's young and we haven't really changed the texture too much on her face here. Okay, so my techniques will include some time-saving tools and processes that I hope will make skin retouching projects less daunting for you and yet more professional looking too. Now, granted, it's not going to be the same caliber as the pros who spend 5 days working with frequency separation and things like that, but I think for most people, the kind of results that you can achieve will be very effective with the tools that I'm going to show you. In demo number 1, I'll show step-by-step how to prepare portraits for retouching, including an easy Photoshop technique to reduce dark under eye circles, and then I'll follow that by how to use Photoshop's AI to smooth acne-covered skin. And again, that's helping you to achieve looks like that. In demo number 2, I'll walk through a generative AI-based approach to tattoo removal, and I'll be showing it used for both lighter and darker skin tones, so that you'll know that whoever you're trying to retouch pictures of, these tools and techniques should work for different skin tones as well. If you are new to it, generative AI in Photoshop uses machine learning to analyze and enhance images with minimal effort on your part. But do keep in mind, and I always hesitate to do these kinds of things in videos, the results are unpredictable. You can't be guaranteed that you will get what you want each time. So I'm just going to cross my fingers in the demos here too. And also know that the results are not replicable. So even if you type in the same descriptions of what you want the AI to produce, it won't give you the same thing each time. So my warning or caution or advice to you is, if you get something that you even vaguely like, save it and then try again if you want to try again before you lose something. Okay, so that's just a helpful hint up front here. Some brief administrative information before I get into the demos. So below the video here on this YouTube page, I'll list the start times for key topics in the description in case you want to take a break and come back or hop around. I'll also provide links to the demo photos that I can share, so not all of them I can. If you're new to my channel or have not subscribed yet and you want to be notified of my future Photoshop workshops, please click the free subscribe button and the black bell icon below this video to get a single notification from YouTube when I release free content each month. If you've already subscribed, there is no need to click again. Once you do it, you're all set. Okay, so I am going to pause this for a moment while I set up for demo number 1, which, as I said, will be about skin smoothing and under eye dark circle removal. So hold on for just a moment. Okay, so this will be demo number 1, and as I said, demo number 1 is about how to remove blemishes and smooth skin, plus I'll show how to reduce under eye dark circles. Okay, so the first thing I always recommend is to duplicate your background layer so that you don't do any damage to your original. There's 2 methods you can use. You can either in your layers panel, here's my layers panel's at the top, my properties panel is at the bottom, and my toolbar is docked right. So on that background layer, you can either left click and drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, which is the box with the plus, and release, and you get a copy. Or while you were on that background layer, you can do a Control or Command and J, and that will jump up a copy. So either way will work. So now that we have our background copy, we want to add an empty layer. So again, bottom of the layers panel, come back to that add new layer icon, the box with the plus, and we get this empty layer here. And I'm just going to double click on that word layer and label this. And this is going to be our pre-spot layer, okay? All right, so what we want to do is I want to, and you should, pre-spot any of the blemishes. So again, he's got pretty bad acne. If I zoom in, you can maybe see it a little better here. So he's got really bad skin with lots of acne here. He also has these dark under eye circles. So I am suggesting that the best thing to do is to do some pre-spotting before you try the skin smoothing, because I think it will just work better in terms of how it will process and smooth if it has a little bit more even surface to start with. Sort of like before you do your laundry or your dry cleaning, if you pre-spot the really bad spots first, it usually comes out a little bit better. All right, so in order to do this, I am going to use the Remove tool. Now, and again, I'm going to be working on this empty layer, and we have everything set that we need to up here. You could also use the healing brush if you want to, so that's another option if you prefer to work with the healing brush. So with the Remove tool active, I'm going to come down to the toolbar to this tool that looks like a little band-aid with little magic sparkles next to it. Click on that, and you'll see if I hover that's the Remove tool. So make sure whatever tool you're using has a black behind it to show that it's active. And then I am going to, so the green is my highlighter so you can see where I am, and the tool is usually in the center. So I'm hitting the right bracket key to make that Remove tool a little bit bigger. And I try to go just a little bit bigger than the things that I'm trying to remove, not too huge, okay? So I'm just going to click around and remove some of these very obvious pimples and blemishes on his face. I do not, so let me just pause for a moment here to talk. I do not remove permanent things on a person's face. So if they have freckles, if they have some warts, things like that, things that are permanent. So acne theoretically should come and go, and that's a temporary kind of thing. So I feel perfectly fine removing that. But, things like, I can't tell, this looks like a pimple here too, but some of these look like they are freckles or just dark spots on his skin. So I would say do not remove those. If you have a friend, family member, or client who wants those things removed, that's one thing, and asks you to remove it, that's fine, but don't just decide on your own to get rid of those things. Okay, so I'll just keep clicking around and don't need to narrate while I'm doing that. Each time I'm doing this, I am just left clicking with a mouse. One other thing I do want to mention, so you'll see I'm coming down onto his neck. And so this is important to know. With the tool that I'm going to be showing you, Adobe has not trained it to go all the way down very far onto the neck. So you'll just have to be sure that you can work with and make adjustments to the neck. I'll show you when we get into the tool that the model is only going to, the model meaning the mathematical model that's used for the tool will only cover part of primarily the head. That's what it's trained to cover. And I'm going to just get rid of a few little extra hairs. So I don't know if you can see that hair there. So I'll just do a little sweep on that. There's some along his jawline. I'm just cleaning up some of the little hairs here too as we go. And then it looks like he has breakouts around his mouth. So I'll start trying to just make my remove tool a little bit bigger with the right bracket key. And then if it doesn't do an exact line the way I want, I try to sweep and hopefully it'll, yeah, see, that'll cover it. If single clicks don't work, sometimes you need to give it some reference from the area adjacent and pull across. Looks like the same thing is happening on this side of his mouth. I'll just clean up a little bit of the hair there. Okay, so since we're primarily focused for him on the blemishes and the acne, I think we're in pretty good shape. I'm just, again, trying to focus on the things that look like acne versus freckles. Okay, so let's just say that's good enough for a pre-spotting for now. So now the next thing I'm going to do is add over here in the layers panel on the right, above this pre-spot layer, I want to have new layers that I can address these dark circles. Again, I think it makes sense to do it before doing the skin smoothing, and then everything will be consistent. So I want to add a stamp layer. Go to the bottom of the layers panel, click on that add new layer icon, left click, and now we have a new empty layer. We're going to do the claw maneuver here to create the stamp layer. So you simultaneously hold Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E, and you get a stamp layer. Let me label that. And the stamp layer is essentially a composite or a merge of everything that's come before it, and it gives you essentially a new base layer to work from. But the nice thing is it doesn't collapse all the layers, so if you do want to go backwards to your history, you can. But once you make the stamp layer, you will have to undo it if you want to go back. You can't just automatically come back to these lower layers, so just an FYI for that. Okay, so now we want to work with these dark circles under his eyes. So let me zoom in a little bit here. To do that, what I want to do is I'll show you a process that's just a few steps. It's about 4 steps altogether. Okay, so we're going to use the lasso tool, which I already have highlighted here in the toolbar. It's the thing that actually looks like a little lasso, and it has the black behind it, so it's active. And what I want to do with that is circle the dark area and some of the lighter good area below where the dark area is. So, and I'm doing this with a mouse, so it might right now, so it might be a little wacky in how it traces. Okay, and again, don't come up too close to the eye, because just think about the fact that the eye has roundness to it, and it's going to push out the lower lid portion and have some shape. So you don't totally want to have that all white, or it will look flat and it won't look like there's a real eye under there. So come just below kind of that little ridge there, and then be sure you include some of the lighter area on your picture that you're going to work with. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is with this selection active, so we have the marching ants with this active selection that we just made, we're going to use the quick mask tool. So you can either press the Q key and release it, or in your toolbar, come down to where you see this rectangle with a dash circle in it. That's for quick mask. So you can either click on that or press the Q key. I'm just going to press Q. Okay, and now you can see you've got the mask where the quick mask is, and you can see it's just showing you on your layer that you're currently in a quick mask mode. So what I want to do, and what you want to do, is soften the edges of this selection, because you can see it's a hard edge right now. That's the benefit of seeing the mask, but you want it to transition more smoothly to the rest of the face, so you don't want any harsh selection lines, so we want to soften it. So we're going to go to the top of the Photoshop interface, to the filter menu right up here where my highlighter is, click on that, come down to blur, and then fly out to Gaussian blur. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and left click to open up that little box. So now we're in the dialog box. As you can see, I have the preview clicked to on. And what we want to do is just soften these edges up enough so that it will transition more smoothly. So this is at 1.5 pixels right now. Softer is to the right. And you can, if you want, you don't need to watch my numbers because there's no formula. You can just look at your image here, see where my highlighter is, and just see when it starts looking like it's getting softer. Oh, that's pretty good. Let me go up just a bit more. There we go. I'll leave it there for mine. Okay, so once you get it with a softer edge like that, you can click OK. And then press Q again to turn off the quick mask. So it's a toggle. Pressing Q once turns the quick mask on. Pressing Q another time turns it off. So I pressed it, and there we go. Okay, so now I'm still going to leave that active selection there. Next step is to use the brush tool. So again, in the toolbar, come down to the brush tool, and mine is right here. So I've sort of customized my toolbars to just look for yours. It looks like a little paintbrush. Left click on that till it's active. And then we want to look at the options for that brush and set the options for that brush. So every tool in this toolbar has options that can be set for it. And this is the options bar across the top where you'll see what the options are for each tool. So these are the options for the brush tool. So let's start here where we can see a little example of the brush tip. Click that little down arrow. You want to be working with a soft brush, and you want to make sure that it is soft. So the hardness slider farther to the right is hard, furthest to the left is soft. So that's good. We're on a soft brush. Okay. The next thing to do this is I want to work with the screen blend mode. So just be sure to turn these back to, because they will be sticky and they'll hold these settings. So just be sure to set it back to normal when you're finished. So click on the little down arrow, and I set mine to screen. You can try lighten too and see if that works for yours. I'll click screen. So now we have the brush set to the screen blend mode. And if you hear my voice is getting gravelly, I'm going to just take a sip of water. Hold on. Okay. Next setting we have to look at coming over on the options bar for the brush tool is opacity. If you leave it at full opacity, you're going to just be painting solid color over this. We don't want that to happen. So I would recommend that you come to around 40 to 50%, and then you can tell for yours if you need to undo it and make it even lower. But let me just start around 40 and see how that goes. All right, so my opacity for the brush and what I'm painting with will be at 40%. Next is flow. So again, for when you're doing retouching things, I'd say keep the flow of your brush under 11, certainly 11 or 12. But I might try it around 8 or 9 just to see how that goes here too. Because again, especially with skin, you don't want to lose the details and the texture of the skin. So I just left click on the word and drag left. There, I'll leave it at 9%. If you don't want to left click, and that works for opacity too, and just drag, you can click the little down arrows and you'll get a slider. Okay, so that is set with the options that I want right now. Okay, so now that we've got those done, what we want to do is sample a lighter area of skin, and that's why I said to include lighter areas of skin that we can paint with in here. So to do that with this brush tool still active over here in the toolbar, yours might be on the left, we're going to press the Alt or the Option key, keep it depressed, and look at, so if you watch inside my highlighter, the green highlighter here, see, it changes to an eyedropper, so you can sample the color. So I want to sample a light color that's here under the eye and then release it. Okay, and then I'm just going to paint in strokes gradually and build it up. That was part of the motivation for using flow as a setting, because each time you release and then paint again, when you have flow on something other than 100%, it will build up. So I didn't want it to happen too quickly. So I'm stroke and release, and again, I'm using a mouse right now. And then from time to time, you might want to sample other areas. And again, you're sampling from the lighter areas. Click to sample, Alt Option, release, paint. See, I'm doing just short strokes, and after each stroke, I release. And the idea will be, again, this is sort of in the prep for skin smoothing. This is just trying to get it a little better than it is now. Okay, so let's just say that's good enough. We've used our paintbrush, and you can see here in the foreground color on the right, in the toolbar down the bottom of the toolbar, that that was the last color I sampled is showing up in the foreground. Okay, so now I am going to call this, I'm going to double click to label that and call that right eye, because that's his right eye, even if it's camera left. Okay. So then I'm going to do a Control or Command D to get rid of these marching ants selection here. Okay. And now I want to create another layer so that we can do his left eye. So again, bottom of the layers panel, add new layer icon, left click, we got that. This will be his left eye. And we're going to do the stamp layer again. So we're press Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option and E at the same time, and you get the second stamp layer. So now we're going to repeat the process we did before. Come back to the lasso tool on the toolbar, and we're just going to circle the area where it's dark and down into some of the lighter area. And normally if I'm doing things like this, I'd be doing it with a stylus, but it's just quick and dirty here to show you the process. Okay, so now we need to use the quick mask again, so the Q key. Then come back as the next step up to filter, at the top of the interface, blur, Gaussian blur, and it's still, see, you can see it's sticky, it holds the setting. So I'm just going to leave it where it was because that was a good amount of blurring. So click OK, and then Q key again to get rid of the quick mask. So now we have our gently blurred area that we can paint in. So again, want to use, come back down on the toolbar to your brush tool, left click to make it active. And again, you want to sample a light color to paint with in that area. And again, we haven't changed the option settings, so you should still be good to go on that. So I'm going to use the Alt or the Option and click down in the brighter area. You can see it replaces the color there. And then just short brush strokes over the dark under eye area. And when you have a selection, it's like an invisible electric fence. You can't go over it. So if you can see, my brush is kind of, I'm just doing a nice swoop here, swipe, whatever, with the brush, and it will not paint where the selection line is. It's like a barrier. Okay, so again, let's just say that's good enough because you're not going to be working with this image, but just get yours so that the colors are a little bit more even tone and you don't see dark circles under the eye. And then after you get it the way you want, you can do a Control or Command D to get rid of the marching ants. And I'm going to set this back to the default color here. And I'm going to go back to the, oh, wait a minute, one more thing. So usually what I like to do, it's the same thing I do when I'm taking photos. If I change the settings, I kind of go back to a default setting so I don't accidentally shoot with the wrong thing. So same thing with the options for the tools. I like to put them back to the 100%. Oops. And put the blend mode back to normal. So if we use it for something else, then we're not using it on the wrong settings. And then my neutral tool that I go back to is the lasso tool. Okay, so now we've done all the pre-prep work that we needed to do. What I would suggest that you do is for these two eye layers, under eye layers that we just corrected, I would say either merge them, which you can do by right click in there and come down to, well, you could, here, you could select them both and then right click and then choose merge layers, or you can leave them highlighted like that and come to the bottom of the layers panel to this icon that looks like a manila folder, which is the group icon, and then you can just do create a group and call that under eye circles, or whatever you want to call it. I just find it helpful to label my layers. So let's just turn the eye off for a moment and see, yeah, so you can see. So there's with the under eye circles removed, and that's where they were in the original. So you can see it's helped and lighten them up a lot. Okay, so now again, we're going to do another stamp layer in the layers panel. So again, bottom of the layers panel, add new layer icon, get the empty layer, do a shift, control or command, alt or option and E. Okay, and this is going to be the stamp layer that we will use for skin smoothing. And this is an AI process in Photoshop. Okay. Now, before we go into this tool, what I highly recommend is that you convert this to a smart object. So if you want to make modifications to the settings after the fact, you don't have to start over. To do that, come into the empty space on this layer, right click, come down this pop-up menu to where it says convert to smart object and left click. And you'll see you get this little icon in the lower right corner that tells you that this is now a smart object. There is, and I'm going to pull out a little bit so we can see what's happening. There is no need to make any selections on his face. The neural filter that we're going to go to will apply it to what it detects as his face. So now with that layer active and set as a smart object, top of the interface to the filter menu, come down to where it says neural filters and left click and just wait till Photoshop loads it. It might take a moment depending on how fast your computer is. Okay, and we're going to work in the portrait area here of the neural filters, and specifically we're going to be using the skin smoothing tool. Now, as I told you earlier, the model that Adobe uses, so it's not that he's a model, but the algorithmic model that they use puts this square around what it identifies as a face or a head. It comes down a little bit on the neck, as you can see, and again, depending on the image, that might vary, but it's not coming all the way down his neck, or it would come down to a décolletage or something like that. So you just have to retouch in the areas where it's not going to be working. Okay, so now that we are in skin smoothing here as an option, one thing I want to point out to you, I have already downloaded all these neural filters, so you can see they all have on and off switches. You might see, if you've never used it, you might see a little cloud icon. That means that you need to download the filter to your computer. So if you see that little cloud icon, just click on it and wait a moment until you get the acknowledgement or see this on-off switch that skin smoothing or whatever other feature you want to use has been downloaded. Once it's there, click that switch to on. You can see it turned it on, and I don't know if you saw at the bottom of my screen, it already did some processing. So we have two sliders we can use to do the skin smoothing in this neural filter, which is AI based. And again, I might come in a little closer so you can see what we're doing. What I like to do is, even though the blur filter is on the top, I like to start with the smoothness slider, because the smoothness slider is typically more natural and more subtle, and you don't lose as many details in the skin. The Blur affects the entire image and is a lot more aggressive in terms of how it works. So I'm just going to start with smoothness first and then do blur if it's needed. And again, I can't give you a formula. Just watch your image as you pull the slider and see how it's affecting the skin that you're working on. And again, you might be doing it with wrinkles and not acne or blemishes like I am. So it would work in very much the same way. You just decide how much you want to do it. All right, so I don't want to go too aggressive. I'm just going to go slowly here and release. And I'm watching also where I did some of this painting to be sure we don't have lines of bad concealer or badly blended makeup. We all know what badly blended makeup can look like. And it's not a good thing. Okay, so I might actually stop there. Well, let's just maybe go up a little higher and see if we need to back off. Sometimes it's good to go too far and then back down. That's actually pretty good, but let me err on the side of subtle, okay? All right, and then we can see if we even need, let me move him up, see what his neck looks like. His neck is pretty good because he had very bad acne there. We can just do a little bit of blurring just to show. I'm going to go to the left because I don't want too much blurring here. So it started at 50. I'm going left to do less blurring. And again, I do a little bit and then I release and let it process, because if you'll see on my computer down the bottom, when I release my mouse button, it quickly processes. Okay, so you don't need to watch me get too, perfectionist with this, but it definitely, play with yours and take the time you need for yours, and there is no formula. Now, again, theoretically, this model should only be, because it's called skin smoothing, it should be trained to recognize and only work on skin. But you may need to go in after the fact and unblur some of the areas that might have, like hair, because you can see his eyes still look sharp, but I think his piercing here looks like it got blurry. You don't want a mouth to be blurry. There is drop off here, so this is fine because that's shallow depth of field. Probably around the nostrils and the nose, we don't want that blurry. We certainly wouldn't want the eyelashes, the eyes, or the eyebrows blurry. So the reason I mention it is after you get your settings where you want with the smoothness and the blur, come down to the bottom and it asks you how you want to output your result. And by default, this one is showing a smart filter since I converted it to a smart filter. Click the little down arrow. What I recommend you use is new layer masked, because that way it'll put a mask on the output layer and you can brush away any area where you don't want the blurring applied. So new layer masked, click OK. Okay, so now we have our neural filter output layer. And as you can see, as I requested, it's put a mask on the layer, and where it's white is where it has applied blurring and smoothing, and where it's black, it has not. Okay, so you can see around this nose area that definitely had applied some blurring. So what I want to do is stay on that mask and be sure the mask is active and you're not painting on the thumbnail. So there should be a white frame around whatever is active. And then I want to come down to my brush tool on the toolbar. And I want to use black as a foreground color because masks work black and white. Black hides, white shows. And I want to be working with a soft brush. Yes, I am. Okay, and again, I'll increase the size of this, and hopefully, and you can see my brush is the white area. It goes to black depending on what it's on inside my highlighter there. So with the brush on soft and black to paint away blurring, hopefully, and everything's 100%, yeah. Hopefully I will be painting away, yeah, so you can see the nose ring there. Look at that. So it's painted it back so that it looks not blurry again. And since his nostrils are right there and adjacent, I want them not to be blurred because they're basically on the same plane and they should be sharp. Okay. Also, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to make this a little bit, brush a little bit bigger with my right bracket key. And I just want to just brush over the hairs for his brows. Make sure they didn't get smoothed. Make the left bracket key to make it a little smaller. Keep the area around his eye. I don't want to go too far down because I don't want to bring back too much of that darkness, but I do want the above on the upper lid sharp. Okay. All right, that's good. And let's just be sure we haven't gotten his lips smoothed in this process. So I want his mouth to be sharp. And there's some color things, but this is not a tutorial on adjusting color tones and stuff like that. This is about smoothing and getting rid of blemishes and things like that. So let's pull out. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Let me just turn the eye off so you can see the before. Can you see that? That's before and after. So it's subtle smoothing. And again, I was trying to keep, because he doesn't look like a perfect, he clearly has some issues with his skin. So I didn't want it to be that plastic, super smooth look. You can do whatever you want, or your client or your family member wants in terms of how smooth you want the skin. But he sort of looks like kind of a roughy, toughy kind of guy here. So I don't want him to be too perfectly smooth. Okay, so let's just say that is that. Okay, so now that we have done that, we've brushed this out. I would say for me, that's it for the skin smoothing. So we have gotten rid of his acne, we've gotten rid of his under eye circles, but we've kept features on his face that should be in focus. And again, I'm talking through this so you see how quickly you could make these kinds of adjustments and refinements to a face. So here's the before, and look at all the acne and everything going on with him in the dark circles. And here's the after. Okay, and as I said, this I would do as a first step, and you can be as aggressive or not as you want. You also could go on and make additional enhancements to this portrait depending on your image. Yours may not need it. I mean, so you might want to do some evening out of skin tones on the body or the face or whatever you are working with, but that goes beyond the focus of this video and this workshop. So I am going to stop now and say that is the end of demo number 1, and we're going to, I'll pause for a moment and then go on to demo number 2, which will be about how to remove tattoos with Photoshop's generative AI. So hold on for a moment. Okay, so now this will be demo number 2, and I'll show step by step again how to remove tattoos with Photoshop's generative AI. And I'm going to use these 2 different photos of people with tattoos. So we'll start with the guy, and you can see that this tattoo extends all over his chest, shoulder, and arms. And then this young woman over here has a tattoo that goes down her left arm. So we'll work with them one at a time and just see how the generative AI handles getting rid of tattoos. Now, again, as I warned you up front at the beginning of the introduction, generative AI can be very unpredictable. It doesn't just necessarily do what you tell it to or want it to. And so you kind of just have to roll with it. So I'm holding, keeping my fingers crossed here for a live demo. But anyway, so let's get started and see what happens. So first things first, in the layers panel at right, we want to duplicate our background layer so we work with it non-destructively. So again, you can either left click and drag that to the add new layer icon at the bottom of the layers panel, or do a control or command and the letter J for jump to make a copy. So this is the copy layer. Okay, and now working with that layer, put that layer active and the blue highlighted there. We want to use the lasso tool, which again in the toolbar looks like a little lasso right there, and it's active because it's got the black behind it. And you want to circle loosely around the tattoo area to create a marching ants selection. So I'm just going to try to, and again, where my pointer cursor is inside, that's where my lasso is working, not the entire green highlighter. So you can see I'm going just outside. Trying to get areas of skin for reference for the AI. I sort of dipped into the red there, so we'll see what happens. It might not fully get rid of it. Come a little outside, dip back into the skin. And then I think I'm going to add this extra little area on his arm too. So I'm going to press the Shift key and hold that and just add to the selection. Okay, and then release. All right, so now we have our marching ants selection. So now what we want to do is use the generative AI. So I have the contextual taskbar up here on my options bar, and I have it pinned. You can pin it there. See those little dots? You can pin it wherever you want, or else you can let it float on the screen. If you don't have that contextual taskbar there, come to your Windows panel. And you can get it right down here. Okay, and then that will help you get the generative fill. All right, so click on the button where it says generative fill, and then you'll get a box where you can type text. So I want to type in the words remove tattoos. Hopefully I spell it right. And then after you get that in there, then you come to the right and click the generate button and then just wait. Okay. And it will, over here in your properties panel, it will give you 3 options. Now, I should mention too, I use the lasso tool, but you could also use the newer selection brush to make your selections if you want to also. So it's your choice, either the lasso tool or the selection brush. I mean, there's so many different options of ways you can do things in Photoshop. Okay, so here are the 3 variations that Photoshop generated for removing those tattoos. So that's option number 1. This is option number 2, but that left a tattoo there, so I don't like that. So I will click on the little trash can to get rid of that. And that left some. So I think because I probably didn't draw smoothly enough around the whole thing, but I feel pretty good about this one. So let me just look quickly relative to his. Okay, so since that was under the tattoo, we can clean up some of this area. So what I would suggest that you do is, if you think you can do better on a second shot, like you didn't like the first 3 options that the generative AI gave you, click the little generate button down here in the properties panel and get 3 more options and see if any of them are any better. Once you've decided on an option that you think works for you, then what I highly recommend you do is to delete the ones that you are not going to use. So I'm going to keep this one, so I'm not going to delete it, because as I said, once it's gone, it's gone. You're not going to get that one back again. So I would say, but get rid of the others that you're not going to use by clicking on those little trash cans symbols in the lower right-hand corners of these boxes, see? Because otherwise it'll add a lot more information to your file and make your file a lot bigger than it needs to be for storage purposes. Okay, so I'm going to say that is good for him in getting rid of his big tattoo. So I'm going to add a stamp layer, and you saw how fast that was, so that was pretty good, and it does get determined by how you do your selection making. I'm going to come to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, the box with the plus. I'm going to add a stamp layer here, Shift Control Alt E or Shift Command Option E, and this is the stamp layer. It's the merge of everything below. And now what I want to do is I am going to add an empty layer above this stamp layer that I can use the remove tool on. So in the toolbar, come down to the remove tool, which looks like a band-aid with little magic sparkles next to it. And I'm going to come to the bottom of the layers panel, add a new empty layer, box with the plus right there. And this is where I'm going to do some cleaning, as I call it, with the remove tool. Okay. All right, so with that remove tool, then I find it works better if you use the remove tool on a empty layer. Just be sure here in your options bar for that remove tool, you have it set to sample all layers. See the little check mark there? Again, I keep mine set to remove after each stroke because I don't want to have to keep remembering to hit the check mark. But if you prefer to have it not do that and then do all your touch-ups and then click the check, you can certainly do that too. So again, I'm just going to go over some of these areas that the generative AI left behind. So I'm just doing short little strokes with that remove tool because again, we don't know what was there because he had the tattoo covering that area. So I feel perfectly fine removing it. Oh, I see what happened and why it generated some more. I didn't get fully captured because it was in the shadow, but you spend more time than I am doing this for yours. And then if I want to do something where an area like this, I will come from the outside in because again, he had the tattoo there, and so I didn't want some of the hair to not be there. Again, these look like freckles or something on his body, so I'm not going to remove those. There's some red streak here which I don't like, so I'll just stroke up that to try to get rid of that, unless somebody put makeup on him to make him look more. And I'm just going to touch up. This has nothing to do with the tattoo. This is just me. Again, not going to do anything with that freckle or that mole or whatever there. Might get little touch up on that red area there on his cheek. And again, see, don't be like me. I get too perfectionist about these things. Okay. You could use the remove tool or even the generative AI. Maybe I think I might use the generative AI in this case to lasso. If you want to trim up his beard, so to speak, you can trim below, something like that, and then make a lasso around it or a selection brush around it, and then try just hitting generative fill and then generate, and it should try to match what's in the area. But the focus here is on removing the tattoo. So I am going to stop there for him because you see that, let's see, just show this here. We certainly got rid of his tattoos, and it was a nice fast thing versus trying to paint over all of that. Okay, so we have the Caucasian man. Now let's try doing this on a darker skin, the African American woman, black woman, whatever you prefer, just to see if it will work with darker skin too, and just to recognize there are people with different skin tones in the world. Okay, so she too has a tattoo on her arm, so let's try the same kind of process that we used on him. So first we're going to do the thing of duplicating the background layer to not be destructive. So this time I'll left click and just drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, or on that background layer, Control or Command J. And now I want to use the lasso tool again to come down to the toolbar right there, okay, to lasso around, loosely around the tattoo area to create that selection of marching ants. And hopefully I'll be better at not leaving some of the tattoo behind, which would confuse the generative AI. I'll dip down into the skin. It might be a problem down there because I probably grabbed some of the tattoo as part of the selection. But just be more careful and go slower for your own. Okay, so we close that to get the marching ants. You have to go all the way around and connect the ends to get the marching ants selection. So now with that selection active, come up to Generative Fill, left click on that, and again, I'm going to type Remove Tattoos. Okay, and then come over to the Generate button, left click that, and then just wait while Photoshop processes. Fingers crossed. Oh, not bad. Okay, I'm always so amazed. All right, so that's option. So over here in the Properties panel at lower right on my setup, yours might be above. That's option 1. Here's, oh, I like that better because it retains some of the shape and the textures and the shadows. That's okay too. So I'm going to get rid of option 1 because to me it was just too smooth. I kind of like this one. And to me, I find it distracting to see that dark red. It was being helpful in carrying it over, but I don't think it's needed. So again, since I don't want those two, I'm discarding them by clicking on the little trash can, and I'm going to keep that one there. Okay, so clearly this works on darker skin also to get rid of the tattoos. So if we look at the before and the after, I mean, look at how fast it's done that. Otherwise, you'd have to, again, be doing things like frequency separation or sampling and painting colors or creating whole new skin or something like that. So the generative AI can just save a ton of time. And if you're not a pro, I think it gives you pretty pro-looking results for the amount of time that you have to invest. So it just depends on your philosophy about AI and using AI. I think, you know, to me, it's a time savers and efficiency thing, and it's helping me to achieve something that I wouldn't have been able to do. So this is the end of demo number 2, which was how to remove tattoos with generative AI. So that is it for the demos. In summary, in this video, I demonstrated how to use Photoshop AI to remove blemishes and tattoos, but remember you can use some of those same techniques on wrinkles too. And then I also showed how to remove dark under eye circles to create more flawless retouched skin. So I would say have fun trying to experiment with finessing your portraits in a fast and I think more professional looking way with Photoshop's AI skin retouching. So take care and see you next time.